Workforce Wednesday with MBRT. I am so honored to be here. For those of you that don't know me by now, I am AnaLysa Sawyers. I am the State Program Manager for MBRT, and I am joined today as my co-host, Mrs. Lori Bell, who is one of our coordinators in Dorchester County. So, Ms. Lori, thank you so much for co-hosting with me.
My pleasure.
And both of us are beyond honored to have as our special guest today, Mr. Stewart, who is a current teacher right now at Cambridge South Dorchester High School. Mr. Stewart, are you there with us?
I am here with you, and good morning
Awesome.
to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we're going to be talking about teaching and the whole education profession because it is, drum roll, Teacher Appreciation Week. So, Mr. Stewart, as a former teacher myself, and I know Ms. Bell was a teacher as well, thank you so much for your service. I think a lot of people now, given what's going on and kind of having to step into the role of teachers as parents at home, are really starting to understand the labor that teachers have been putting in year after year after year. And I think that this Teacher Appreciation Week probably is more significant than any other before, because I think now there is really a true understanding of how much work really goes into educating our youth. And it's not I've always said it's not a task for the faint of heart. So again, thank you so much for your tireless effort and service. We really appreciate you.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get us started. And Ms. Bella and I are both kind of going to be coming at you with a couple of things, and we'll be adding like our own little bit of experience as well. So, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start off with the obvious. I'll pose a question to both of you, Mr. Stewart, if you wouldn't mind answering first. What inspired you to become a teacher?
Well, it's always been for me just the knowledge, seeking knowledge, education, seeking knowledge, wanting to know, asking questions why, and that's kind of is the basis of things. But then also it's the uh, love of teaching, it's the idea of helping other people, and that's where it comes from. Uh, Now, I wasn't always a teacher. I started my career in a different field, actually.
Wow.
And I did basically when I was in college, on colleagues, I would do things like substitute teach. Also, anytime I had the opportunity, do mentorship programs, working with students while I was in college. But my field was actually marine science. I was into the environmental science, wanted to go into research. And it was one of those things where had was just enjoying that field. I chose that field to be in, and even went into being for a few years environmental consulting, working in the business sector. But it was then when I was sitting around, in that in a certain situation where I was just saying, "There's more I can do," and I just felt there was a drive. I just like wanted to make a bigger difference. At the time, it was about at that time when I was in the business sector, it was how the companies could, be able to get along with the local governments and federal government. And for me, it was like they could get through with the laws and how to not spend so much money. And for me, it just didn't feel, it felt empty. So I said, well, how can I make a difference? And I thought back to the days in college. That wasn't at that time wasn't so far back, about how I would do mentoring and how I work with kids, how I would go back and do substitute teaching on my school breaks. And I said, I want to be a teacher. Uh, and of course, when I came back to the state of Maryland and I talked to my mother about it, she said, and she had worked in education as well. She was an educator, and I had other relatives who were educators. But they looked at me and said, "Well, are you are you serious? Are you out your mind? Because you've always been trying to avoid. You said you would never get involved with teaching or anything of that sort." Um, and but that's where I felt that I would make a difference. And it so happened when I came back um, that they needed a teacher for environmental science, which is my field, environmental science. And the principal said, "Hey, you have a good background in science. Uh, you can work on your education courses along the way, so you can get your certification and so on." I took the praxis. I had no problem with the praxis. Took both for both levels of praxis, and I was in, and I started teaching. And that's how it actually became a part. It was that It's basically just having that passion. The I I can remember in that first year though, however, with some ups and downs, understanding exactly what it takes to be a teacher, having the relationship with the students, and it, it was some ups and downs, a lot of downs, I would say. Uh, Students would push your buttons, and I remember at the end of the year, I was just woke up in the morning, and I was like, oh my goodness, or actually before I woke up that evening, about to go to sleep, I was like, do I really want to do this? And because this is tough. And I woke up the next morning with this energy to say, okay, what do I do next to make a difference, to reach these kids? That's when I knew that, okay, this is the field I've been chosen to do. I can do this.
You know what? You said so many things that I know I personally felt myself, and I'm sure Lori does. And I kind of want to circle. I'm going to circle back to you and ask you a couple of things based off of things you said. But I want to give Mrs. Bell a chance to answer the same question. How did you
Sure.
fall into this, or what inspired you to become a teacher?
I didn't go to college to become a teacher. I decided to become a teacher after I joined my sorority, and some of my sorority sisters were planning their lessons for the days to follow. And I thought, wow, that's what I should be doing. That was in my last semester of college. I was an exercise science major. I thought maybe I would go into physical therapy. But, as we get older and wiser, and I look back on my life, I had been working with kids my whole life. I took dance lessons when I was younger. I started teaching dance lessons when I was about 12, teaching the little 4-year-olds. And I followed that all through high school. And it just made sense that I should be a teacher. And the funny story is that my mom always thought I should be a teacher.
Wow.
But she said, if I told you, you wouldn't have done it.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So 6 weeks before graduation, I signed up for another year and did my student teaching, took a few more courses. That's why I got my degree in physical education and health, because that's where my credits were, being an exercise science major.
Wow.
And I like to think of myself as a successful teacher for 31 years. But 31 years is a long time to do anything. And it was just time for a change. So I hopped on board so that I could still help students be successful. I still have that passion to help students, like Mr. Stewart was talking about, but I get to do it in a different way now.
Awesome. I kind of want to share a little bit. I'm not going to go into depth about a lot about myself, but I kind of want to mention something because it's really ironic that all three of us are in the same boat in terms of we didn't start out to be in this profession. My undergraduate degree is in broadcast journalism. I come from a family of educators, like Mr. Stewart was saying, he had family members as well. And so I went as far to the left as I possibly could away from education because that was never in my thought. But as both of you have also stated, I remember just growing up, I was always integrated with kids in my church. I was probably one of the only youth that were actually working with younger kids because I was always helping kids out. And I found myself impromptu teaching other little courses to kids and whether it was dance or whether it was something that I was always working with children. And I never for a second thought about going into education because, again, didn't seem like it was something for me. But I want to kind of say something, and that it'd be interesting to see how you all feel about this. I really feel like becoming a teacher is not something that you choose to do. It's something that you're designed to do because it's not something that everyone can successfully do. And as you said, Ms. Bell, you feel after 31 years that you were successful. And I think that, definitely to hang in for 31 years speaks volumes. So just to quickly, do you all feel that this is something that you were designed to do as opposed to it was a choice necessarily? Or do you feel like literally you were kind of, the universe kind of spoke and pushed you into this? And I pose that to both of you.
Yeah, well, as far as it being a choice, there's a lot of things I could have chosen to do, and this one, it seemed for part of it seemed like I kind of fell into it in a sense. It was the offer to me, the also, but not only that, just looking at, everyone's been saying, just looking at the past, the connections I've already had. Um, Me working with kids while I was in college. Uh, and people would say, you seem to have a way with children, or with teaching, not just necessarily children, but in how I present and talk and share with the adults. I've also done along the way of my journey is also adult learning and working with small colleges as well. So I believe, yeah, it is perhaps design, if you will, or there are certain components within a person that allows them, and that is one, being able to relate with other people, have an understanding, um, and be able to just understand where people are coming from. Uh, the Again, being passionate, but then again also having the compassion as well. Being able to um, just understand that all our learners out there are different various levels. That's also important as well, and that they have various backgrounds, faults that are going on in their lives that are and barriers, if you will, that really can get into their way. So if you can come from that kind of a mindset when you're working with kids, when you're working with adult learners, it doesn't matter. You're able to bring them along. Uh, and then the other things, and of course, you want to have, of course, is obviously the knowledge about the in your methods in teaching, and the pedagogy and so on like that. That's so important. Understanding psychology and so on. So much that goes into it, into teaching. It's not just, well, I can just get in front of a body of people and just give information and it's expected to be understood. A whole lot goes into it.
Right. Great responses. Mrs. Bell, what about you?
It's definitely a calling. I found it so natural and so easy to be in front of the students. And I had different summer jobs as I was growing up, as most of us do, but nothing came as easy to me as teaching. Now, please don't misunderstand. There were obstacles along the way and there were challenges, but I always felt comfortable doing it. And I always felt that maybe, just maybe, I was making a difference in someone's life. Absolutely. And that gave me great satisfaction with what I was doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I use the analogy of a light switch. When you see that light bulb go off over that student's head and you know that you've gotten through, even if it's only one, it's kind of that inspiration to dig a little deeper and push a little harder to see if you can get more light bulbs to go off. And at the end of the day, with all of the hassles and struggles that you go through in a typical day of teaching, it's those moments that really kind of inspire you to continue to go on. And when you look up 31 years, 18 years for myself, I'm not sure how many years Mr. Stewart has, but those years just seem to, I hate to say it, but they seem to kind of fly by, and you look up and
yes, they do.
I mean, and it's like, whoa. When I, at the end of that first year, when I was like you said, Mr. Stewart, I really want to do this again, you find those reasons. And, as situations come up, you see the faces of those students and you remember their stories and their situations, and it inspires you, and it builds character in you. It builds kind of like that foundation for you to do the work again the next year. And again, we strive to be better because the students, as you said, Mr. Stewart, there are different levels to their learning. There are different methods and modes that we have to use as educators to make sure that we're getting that information over to them. So great information and reasons why, we feel like you were called to do this. So this kind of leads me to my next question. What do you guys think are some successful traits or characteristics that a person needs to be a successful teacher? I'll start with you, Ms. Bell.
The first one that popped into my mind was flexibility.
I agree.
No 2 days are ever the same. And you can plan on paper the most amazing lesson. That doesn't mean it's going to happen that way.
Absolutely.
And every student you have needs something different. So one of the biggest traits is to have flexibility. I also believe you need a lot of patience, because some of our students, we don't know what home is like. And they aren't all the same, and they all don't sit at little desks with their hands folded with their paper on the sides waiting for the next direction. And they need the patience and they need the caring. And if you can build those connections with students, that is when you're going to be successful.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go with Miss Bell saying, but also add in there resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta have to be you have to be thick-skinned, if you will, uh, because again, with the your the feedback from your students, from the learners, and working with their colleagues and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that are coming at you, and um, you know, we would like to think, paint a rosy picture and say it's all positive and all the music's going and everything's great, but it's not necessarily true. And there are the many a days in which it's like people are taking shots at you with nails and everything else that can come at you, and you have to be willing, being able to withstand,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to deal with the negative, unfortunately, that comes your way. Uh, uh, and when you come back with that, dealing with that, try to come back with a more positive manner of dealing with those situations. It doesn't mean that you're going to get hurt, um, and to be able to just say, hey, this just is one day. It's going to be different the next day. And that's true. It's as Miss Bell had said, it's a different day. Something's coming at you different day. So that's how you have to approach it as far as dealing with the negativity and be able to come back with a better and with an answer. Because the things that we go through, it's almost like it makes you stronger. Uh, and you learn from it. If you go through these days, good and bad, and you're doing the same thing over and over again, then there's no growth. And therefore, you're not, I don't think you're in a good position to be a teacher or and really any career, really, tell you the truth.
That's
So
right.
you have to grow with it and you have to learn from it, and be willing to humble yourself and be that
Mm-hmm.
better person, because again, you're dealing with people of all walks of life.
Absolutely, absolutely. That I mean, those traits that you guys just labeled. I was, as you were saying, I was thinking back to different situations, from evaluations, from you have to move from this testing room to that testing room, or we're not starting testing today. Just all the little things that pop up.
Mhm.
So that I was remembering those different things, and that kind of leads me to our next question. We're in a situation right now where teaching doesn't look like it's ever looked in, I think, our lifetimes. How, Mr. Stewart, this is really more so, I guess, to you, how has your position changed and what challenges have you faced given the stay at home order right now with regard to teaching? I know that every county in every state, just nationwide, probably worldwide, is having to deal with this right now. And, our students are in a different place
Mhm.
themselves. How are you handling that? And, how has your job changed?
Right. Well, as you can see, I this is not my normal home area or desk. This is actually in my truck where I might be able to have reception and have the Wi-Fi connection. And so it can be stressful if I let it become stressful. I take various measures to alleviate that stress. Um, One, I have to keep in mind, I still have to prepare for my classes. That's important. Provide feedback to the families, to the students. Of course, entering grades. None of that has changed. That's still the same. And but of course, now that I'm able to work from home or from my truck, but from from oh boy, but what I'm actually finding more to do, actually working at home. 'Cause then once things set aside, my class, my time, my office hours, then I can find things that I would normally wouldn't be able to do in the normal classroom setting. So there are some pros and cons to this. I prefer, though, to be with my students in the classroom. Above all else, I miss my colleagues, the camaraderie that we have coming together. Also, even though there's like a lot of online activities, that things we can access, um, you still don't have your materials in your classroom that's easily accessible. So that's a drawback, definitely. So, again, here's that flexibility that Miss Bell had talked about, and we just roll with it.
Right.
Um, yeah.
So do you think whenever students
Mhm.
are able to go back into the buildings, uh, presumably in the fall, do you think that we'll see any dramatic differences in the way that you'll be able to do your job, or that teachers in general will have to conduct themselves?
Yeah, well, you know, I guess what we have to look at is, one, having those online measures, the various process itself is available in case another emergency arises, and that we have to actually use that. We're going to be better prepared for it. I feel that all teachers will be more comfortable with it. The students, they're going to have a comfort level with it as well. So in this case, it has helped. You think about the idea that colleges are also doing online activities, online learning. So I guess if you wanted to look at it from a positive way, it's a crash course in preparing them for distant learning.
Absolutely.
Uh, so we can definitely say that. But again, nothing takes the place of time before your class, before your students.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Also, I think from a psychological aspect for our students, this is, like I said, this is something new and very difficult for them to deal with, and they're at a age where it's so important to be able to commune with others, to have that social interaction. I mean, I'm not to say that we've sort of passed that very precarious moment of social interaction as we're older adults. So, but the children, they need it more so. That's because they're learning that,
Yeah,
and so to be divided from others, I think that's kind of hurting them more so than anything else.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ms. Bell, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think he summed it up very well.
Okay. I have just a few more questions, but actually just two more, but this one you might have to think about for a bit. Teacher
Mhm.
versus educator. Is there a difference? And whoever comes up with a response first gets to answer that one.
It's approximate.
I,
um, Teacher versus educator.
is there a
Hmm.
difference? I have my personal opinion, but I want to defer until I hear from you all.
Okay. To be honest, I never thought much of the difference between the two. Like,
Okay.
um, but for
You've
some
given
reason, when
me
I
something to think about.
yeah, I'll give you something to think about, right? Ms. Bell, I can defer to you. You go ahead if you want to. If you.
If if I think about the words,
Okay.
Hmm.
if I
Hmm.
just think about the words, when I think teacher, I think of somebody standing in the front of a classroom. If I
Hmm.
think educator, I think of somebody interacting with students and guiding them to make decisions on their own. However, that being excuse me, that being said, excuse me, I'm a very proud teacher.
Understood.
That was also an educator.
Understood. I love it. And just to kind of piggyback
Hey.
off of what you were saying, that's exactly kind of what I was not I won't say wanting to hear, but that's what I was wondering because um, I was thinking about our interactions with parents, part of the job,
Hmm.
and um, given right now, parents have had to become teachers, if you will, or educators to a certain
Mhm.
point. And I remember hearing comments from certain parents about teaching is so easy, it's nothing to be a teacher. And I'm just like, wow. But then I thought about what we do as a teacher that goes beyond the
Hmm.
normal scope of teaching, because some
Mhm.
people think that teaching begins when you enter your building and ends when you leave the building. And I'm sure you both would agree that there are no normal hours to being a teacher. It's, when you take, like you said, those, we don't know what students' home life situations are all the time, and we don't know what they deal with at home, but sometimes they share those things
Mhm.
with us. And
Yeah.
we take those things home with us, and we start thinking about our own network of resources that we may have to aid those students. That goes beyond the classroom. And I think that that's when it evolves into becoming an educator, because you're caring about the whole person, not a specific content area or a specific
Right.
subject. And so, as you say, I think I am proud to say that I was a teacher, but I think I'm even more proud to say that I was an educator, because I know that I went beyond the norm. I didn't allow a bell schedule or a clock to dictate my duties to my, or my responsibilities to my students. So, and the reason I really brought that up is because, and this kind of leads into my final question, for the young person or young people that are thinking about entering this field, having that reality check of knowing that it's not a typical position, where there are several positions where, when you go in, you start at 8 or 9 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever, your day is done. And really, if you don't open your laptop, there's really nothing else you have to do for that position. But that's really not what it's like when you become a teacher or an educator. So to our young people that may be watching now, or even see this after the fact, or they've already decided that this is something that they're interested in doing, what would you say to that young person that's thinking about going into this field, and what advice would you give them, tips or things that you think that they could start doing now to help prepare them to be not just a teacher, but also an educator? And I pose that to both of you.
And I still want to kind of chime into what you just said just a
Sure.
moment ago, because I'm glad we define teacher and educator in a sense of both. I mean, both the same, but one's more formal if you look at it. But I remember a time where I made that difference between the teacher and educator, and when I was in college. And of all the college professors that I had, obviously educators, there was one that I could actually look at, think of one professor who I would actually look at and say, that's a teacher. And that was because of the preparation that they had taken into presenting the material. And it was just so easy to understand. And I got a lot out of that class. So you're right. That is definitely a difference between teacher and educator in that regards. What's important for the new teachers, those those who want to come into the field. Huh, you know, it's one, you bring experiences. I always feel that young teachers coming in, yes, you can learn a lot from the books, but nothing beats experience. And the more you work at your currently where you are right now with youth, with being able to present, getting in front of people and talking. uh, I, that was probably one of my hurdles, is actually getting in front of people and talking. And it it took me a while, even from high school to college. Just it was always I was a wreck, and presenting in front of other people. I still maybe have those butterflies, which I don't expect will ever go away. So that's a good thing, because it just means you're human, you know. It, but but doing those kind of things, that's so important. Not only that, you want to be able to just the understanding that having being a learner yourself, having self-efficacy and so on like that, be able to understand that the process in learning and how important it is, and that's also something that you can relate to students as well. Uh, it's like, don't just talk. The talk is, you heard the expression, but you got to walk it as well, and show that education is important, and then making those connections with what you're teaching to the real world. That's so important. Uh, Theory and concepts are great and all, but if a child cannot make that relationship, then that's an issue there. So if the young teacher's coming in, being able to make that connection, that's very vital.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ms. Bell, to you.
If you feel it, give it a try, because it's not something I feel like I consciously chose. I felt like it chose me.
Mm.
I think if you're the type of person that gets great satisfaction out of helping other people be successful, this is a really great career for you. And I can tell you that you take a lot of work home, but I can also tell you that you are so fulfilled when you help somebody succeed. So it's worth it. But the biggest thing I would say is start getting in classrooms early. Don't wait until you're a junior or senior in college to try to do some mentoring or student teaching and then decide it's not for you.
Right.
Get in those classrooms early. Go ahead and do little internships, help teachers out, and you'll see if it's for you.
Absolutely.
Because the teachers that I've worked with have been so amazing, and you can tell that it was meant for them.
Absolutely.
And
That's awesome.
lastly, I've never worked in a school where teachers didn't support one another.
Oh, and that's important.
And
That's key.
that's
That's
where
key.
you can see a common trait among teachers. They are there for each other to help each other be successful. And that goes for all the staff in the school, actually.
Absolutely. I agree. I think we always kind of associated the saying it takes a village to relate to the students, but that's true, I think, about your colleagues and your the people that you work with, because we have to support one another because we're all in the fight. And I used to say we're in this trench together. And you know, the less we work together, the deeper the trench becomes, and the more difficult it becomes to do the work that is so vitally important. And I see it myself, even though I'm not in the classroom any longer. When I visit the schools, I do still see the need for this profession and for people that are passionate about this work. I think that that's a trait that I meant to mention earlier. You really have to have a passion for this work, because it's not something that, again, you can just read in a book and say, okay, that's it, I'm going to go stand and be a teacher. There has to be something that's innate within you that allows you to be able to do the work that goes beyond anything that a textbook or any class can teach you. So I definitely echo everything that you both have said. So we've kind of gone a little bit over our standard time, but that's okay. I think that this was relevant conversation and great information. And I'm pretty sure, no, actually, I am confident that there are many people that have benefited from our discussion today. So I would like to thank both of you for joining me today and having this very candid conversation about what it is to be a teacher and why this work is so important. And again, I just think that it was the perfect timing for us to do this conversation, given that it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So before I sign off, a couple of things I want to say. First of all, with it being Teacher Appreciation Week, we've all become teachers now if we have kids. So instead of just reaching out to the ones that have been doing this, everybody needs to give themselves a hug and a high five and appreciate yourself, because we're all teachers now. And I think that, again, after things go back to, well, I don't even want to say go back, once we find our new norm, there will be a deeper respect and a deeper appreciation of this profession. And I think that that's going to also aid teachers in being able to do the work that they do in the classroom, right? Because I think we'll see a surge in support from outside of the classroom that is desperately needed. So happy Teacher Appreciation Week to both of you.
Happy Teacher Appreciation Week as well.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Before we sign off, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this edition of Workforce Wednesday. I want to remind you all to download our Way to Be app, which is available in the Apple and Google stores, which gives everyone a wonderful insight to a little bit of the work that we do with MBRT, and it provides a wonderful resource for students and for parents. I want to also remind you all to follow us on all of our social media platforms, which would be Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And lastly, we would invite you all to join us right back here tomorrow when Mrs. Morgan Cox, who is our Caroline County coordinator, will be discussing tips on how to stay organized. I know we're all at home and things look a little different now, and things can become kind of hectic and scattered. And so she's going to tell us how we can remain organized and kind of keep ourselves focused during this time. So for MBRT, on behalf of Mr. Stewart and Ms. Bell, this is AnaLysa Sawyers signing off, thanking you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.